however, it's the 15th of July, 2015, and again, I know I keep mentioning this word here, is just flying by, but I'm hearing from people in some parts of the world it's extremely hot, down in Florida, down in Louisiana, that part of America. And here it was very nice today, but it's been very erratic, and the weather's crazy. The weather's been very, very strange, but there's also been, the psychological weathers have been very interesting lately. You see, I am a firm believer that the climate in the exterior of the world is a reflection of the psychological climate within people, in society as a whole, as above, so below. I make no distinction. You see, people are very quick to talk about the effect of the stars and astrology on human behavior, and I don't doubt that at all. I think there's quite something to that. I mean, when you have minds like Isaac Newton and Carl Jung saying there's definitely something to astrological cycles and human behavior, well, you pay attention. And I think the climate works the same way as well. I think the climate and the cycles of human potentials and behaviors are very similar. So here we are at the 15th of July 2015. My name is Thomas Sheridan on the Velocity of Now, and this is on the Reality Bites radio network predominantly, but it goes out all across the world on other channels too. And thank you for joining. Thank you for being part of the conversation. My website is thomassheridanarts.com. Now tonight we'll be talking about a lot of things, but I played that Shirley Bassey song because I went into a charity shop today to look for a jacket. I know it's a bit weird shopping for a winter jacket in summer, but this is when you get them. You get a winter jacket cheaper, or you get lucky and you find one. I didn't find one today, but you'll find in charity shops, you'll find the best deals on clothes off season because no one's actually looking for a nice winter jacket in July. So I was in there today, and when I walked in the door, I got chatting to the woman that was there, and she says to me, you know, you're the first person that's come into the place in a whole week with a big smile on your face. And I said, why do you say that? And she said, I've never seen a week where everybody just seemed upset. And everybody seemed to be fighting with each other. Everybody seemed to be arguing with each other. Nothing seemed to work. Nothing seemed to go right. There was a terrible sense of antagonism in the air. And I thought that was very interesting because that's definitely true. I've seen it it hasn't really happened to me. I mean, I've been getting on quite well with people. But, I mean, around the town and stuff, everyone's been in good crack. But, you know, I guess it happens in the world. Other people have said it to me that things have gone nasty for them the last few weeks. And it seems to have reached, and I know this sounds like I'm not taking sides in this crap, but it seems to have peaked around the time of the 12th of July thing in Ulster. Now, that, as we all know, that's a gigantic black magic ceremony. And again, I'm not taking sides because I know St. Patrick's Day is another one. But it's just that seems to have been the epicenter of the noise, the psychic noise. And as you know, the best way to break these things, being someone who believes very much in the bardic, satirical magic idea, that humor and satire is a fantastic way of relieving the tension. Now, people are saying to themselves, oh, it's a shit time and things are not going well and everything is like, very disruptive and so on like that. But you have to understand, these are natural, normal cycles, and it's your relationship and your reaction to them is what determines the outcome. It's like when a wave comes and you're out at sea or on a surfboard or on a rowing boat. If the wave comes at you, you can either turn your boat sideways to it and try to stop it, which you won't, or you can turn your boat or your surfboard pointing towards the beach and you ride that wave. And that's the way you do. And these psychic interferences are the same way too. They work exactly the same way. Now, I see them as when a shock or something incredible happens to you that's tremendously disruptive in your life, suddenly and quickly, what that is let's use mythology and allegory and metaphor here. That is the god Thor. This is the tarot card in the tarot, by the way. The tarot card in the tarot is all about having the slate wiped clean. A sudden shock out of the blue that rattles and destroys the ego. That's its purpose within the major arcana. And the tower comes after you've built up your personality, you've built up your social mask, your ego, and everything else. You've built up your sense of what you believe is your own self-identity, and then it's in the tarot. It's actually Lucifer, but it's also, because the tarot is uniquely the only thing on earth that's based on many archetypes. It's also the hammer of Thor. The hammer of Thor, its purity, that bolt of lightning that strikes, say, a tree. Let's put it in the analogy of a tree, because I'm thinking a lot about trees lately. I cut down some of my property and I was doing some pruning and stuff like that. And I was thinking about trees. You think of like this time of year when we have the hot weather, the build up of pressure, the build up of static electricity, and the discharges from clouds towards the earth. Most commonly they will strike trees. Now you think, say you're a tree, right? And Thor decides to hit you. That lightning bolt comes from the clouds, flies down from Valhalla, hits the tree, and what does it do? It doesn't kill the tree. A tree is rarely killed by lightning, but anything around the tree is usually destroyed, like animals grazing and things like that. But more importantly, the bad parts of the tree are knocked off. You have limbs that are rotten away or diseased or infected, and they're shocked off by the flash of lightning. You have old birds' nests. The birds aren't nesting this time of years, so it doesn't matter to them. So they've already had their hatchlings and they're gone, and they will fly out of the tree. Now all this matter will plummet from the top of the tree down towards the ground in fire. It will hit the ground, and its ashes will then provide nutrients for the tree to grow again. New nutrients that previously wasn't there. And that's how it is. This is what's happening when you have these disruptive periods in the matrix, like so many of us seem to be having at the moment, these strange sudden manifestations and paradigms that at first seem like a shock. What you have to realize is it's no big deal. What this is Thor firing a thunderbolt at your tree. The rotten limbs, the decayed matter, the parasites, and the old nests are all sent out of the tree in a burst of fire. They land on the ground, the ashes decay, and new nutrients are fed into your roots, and you grow even stronger and taller. And we're never told these things in school. I did a talk there recently in Australia. I wasn't in Australia, with some people at a poetry circle, and I described it just as that the purpose of mythology is to compensate for realities and things that happen in the real world, a form of comparative analytical psychology that allow you to deal with the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And when you can start to process things this way, you don't resort to paranoia, hysteria, smear campaigns, witch hunts, contacting people like a fucking lunatic, trying to turn them against them and looking like a bigger lunatic than you think you do, surrounding yourself with the mentally unstable and the unhealthy, because that's not a winning game. Because instead of letting the dice fall, letting the rotten branches fall to the ground, what you're doing is you're denying evolution. And evolution is stagnation, evolution is entropy, and evolution is death. So if you find yourself in your life at this point, at the moment, if you had some difficult weeks, laugh it off, joke it off, and that's what will turn your surfboard or your sailboat perpendicular to the wave, and you'll cruise down back to the shore and begin again. Because remember, everything is cyclical in nature. Now, tonight's show is going to be a fucking interesting one. I've come up with some amazing info lately. But firstly, I want to talk about the energy cycles at the moment. And this relates to the dreams things that I've been talking about. The Dream Show last week had an absolutely phenomenal response. Of all the shows I've done on this stuff since I've started doing radio shows, I don't think any show has ever had the impact, caused the most amounts of emails, letters, and private messages that last week's show on what is sleep caused. It was off the feckin' scale. It seems to have really touched a lot of people in a very deep way, and the time for this seems to be right. Now, I was inundated with lots of PMs and emails about people's dream experiences, and the general idea is for us to have this discussion and dialogue on it, because I want to have an experimental nature to this, okay? And the data has to be processed properly. So thank you all for writing to me. Thank you all for your experiences. But we're going to start with a clean slate. But before I give you details of that, I want to talk about the dreams I've been having since then. Now, they were very beautiful. I've had nothing but beautiful dreams. Very vivid, beautiful dreams since last week's shows. And there's been a tremendously powerful goddess crone energy within them. There's a tremendous sense of being protected by a female energy, a very powerful, maternal, compassionate, loving energy in all the dreams. I've never had anything quite like it in such a long time. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And the women that have appeared in the dreams, they weren't sexual or anything like that. They were very hugging and lovey-dovey. The women who appeared in the dreams, they were not, sexy women and all. They were women, well, some of them were, but they were all women of different age groups and different ages. And what I felt from them was a tremendous sense of caring and love. Beautiful. But there was one dream I had last night that I want to tell you about because it's specifically important to me as a person. I've been dreaming, a lot of my dreams revolve around me and going into buildings. It's been like this all my life. I think I spoke on a previous show about a dream that I had about a house at the corner of two streets. And I only went into the ground floor of this initially of the house, and I knew there was absolute and horrific evil on the second and third floors. It was an Amityville horror, American kind. Those American kind of houses that, like the Addams Family house, that have 2 or 3 floors, or they have 2 floors and a fitted out attic, a fully furnished fitted out attic. That style of American kind of house on a corner, which is very significant, with a lawn around it on both sides. And so a crossroads, essentially. And so when I went into this house, the downstairs of the house was barren and empty. It wasn't disruptive or wrecked or anything like that. It was just had no furnishings, no nothing in it, no pictures on the wall. But upstairs was full of amazing stuff, and stuff I needed to get, okay? It was stuff that I had to get my hands on. Treasures, things I needed, intellectual ideas, books, all kinds of maps. Maps were very common in it. All kinds of things like that. But it had this sense of evil on the second floor and the third floor, especially the third floor, the upper fitted out, attic roof area, that was shockingly disturbing. Now, we spoke last week about when you're in a dream state, is this the other side of us? Another aspect or version of your reality? And yes, I think these dreams, these series of dreams of me on the street, very, very, very much was that. Now, it makes me wonder too, we'll talk about this in a different matter later on the show, but it makes me wonder too, if ghosts are not the spirits of the departed, but are in fact people who are asleep in your house. They're in that sleep traveling state. Now, it's different than astral traveling, and it's absolutely different than these things of taking ayahuasca and these shamanic medicines. Because remember, people in dreams come back with information that happens. Where someone who goes on ayahuasca, jungle juice, or shrooms, you don't come back with any kind of future messages. You don't come back with any kind of things that come true. And certainly I've never met or heard of one person who does, I'm not putting down astral projection, I'm sure it's true, that has done astral projection and come back with a prediction of the future. I've not heard it. But yet all of us have a precognitive dreams of things that happened in the future that we witnessed in the dream beforehand and came true. That's happened all of us. Either it's happened in very clear and succinct metaphor, like there wasn't just like you had to really dig the meaning out, or we've absolutely seen it as it really is. This only happens in dreaming, which would suggest that the only aspect of human extra sensory, extra consciousness traveling that's real, that we can actually say is absolutely 100% real, is dreaming. Because we can actually bring back information of what's going to happen in the future in dreaming. Nothing else does that. Now this is so powerful, and this would also explain why dreams have been degraded and belittled by the man. The man wants us all on those of you who say, oh, we have to all take ayahuasca because they don't want the masses from taking ayahuasca, because, man, if we take the ayahuasca, then the matrix, man, will really fall apart. If that's true, why are they pushing that shit in our face constantly? Think about that one. Why are they pushing the ayahuasca jungle juice stuff in our face constantly if it's really I'm gonna wake the masses up, man. I'm gonna wake the masses up. That's like cutting your dick off to prove you're not sexist. Man, I worship the yoni. I worship the yoni, man. And I had my penis removed to worship the goddess. That's what that's like. That's the same rational thing. Nothing comes out of the ayahuasca thing, and people are just as much big dicks as they were before they went in. Same with all the fucking things, all those drugs, everything, even heavy cannabis use. Is it Wetico or is it weeds Tico? Now, I'm not putting down people that smoke the weed, that's their own business, but any kind of thing, from alcohol, sniffing glue, too much pot, too much anything, ayahuasca will fuck you up. That's absolutely no doubt about that. So the only real shamanic, shall we say, and I put that in quotations because I don't really, it isn't that, but the only really transcendental, extra consciousness state that can really produce results is dreaming. And we all do it, and we don't have to pay a drug dealer or the CIA trafficking stuff out of Arkansas to get there. We don't have to do that. You know, we don't have to pay somebody, you know, for our shamanic medicine that resulted in somebody in Kingstown, Jamaica, having their head pumped full of bullets, you know, so we can feel all spiritual, man. I'm so spiritual. And I can tell you for a fact, down in Peru, we haven't heard from it yet, but we will, that all the ayahuasca jungle juice groups are all probably doing hits on each other, just like cocaine dealers, to get some of that cracker money that's coming down that way. So, yeah, I don't care if you inject yourself with shoe polish. That's your own business. But I'm telling you, for a fact, the only transcendental state that we can actually say for sure produces results is dreaming. Now, so I always had this dream of the house, and it on the second floor, and it having a sense of pure evil. And then in the last year or so, I've been able to go to the top of this house, to the roof and the second floor, and actually find things and useful things. Hello and welcome back. Paul scared the feckin' shite out of me just then when I was talking about the nightmares in the house, and she cut me off to say that the show was the quality of the broadcast was poor. So hopefully it's better now. But Jesus Christ, it was like fucking Bisto in the trousers time. I came out of fucking nowhere. So thank you, Paula, for scaring the shit out of me. But we have to get. I do the show in the dark with no lights and everything, so it's like kind of. Probably I like to do it to get the kind of the atmosphere. But anyway, maybe the feds are trying to take me down again. But I don't know how much was lost. But I'm talking about this house that I get to the second floor. I no longer get the sense of tremendous evil anymore. I no longer get the sense of tremendous fear anymore. I no longer get the sense of pain and this sense of evil that came with the second and third floors. And this week, it's been the exact opposite. Wow, it's been just unbelievable. Last night, I had a dream whereby I was on the roof of a brownstone building I used to live in New York that was in a bad neighborhood. I mean, it really was. It really was when I lived there. It wasn't a terrible neighborhood, but it was a neighborhood that was not, shall we say, des res. But I lived there because it was fantastic rent and it was only across the river from Manhattan. So rather than living in Manhattan and spending an absolute fortune on rent, I was spending like $500 a month living in a beautiful brownstone building, beautiful apartment that you'd probably pay if it was across the river in Manhattan. It would probably be 2 or 3 thousand for the same space, and just having to deal with the whole thing of walking down the street, and Puerto Rican and Colombian guys going, yeah, the white man, and all this, but they would never harm you, and especially after I started to shop when I was shopping at their bodegas and stuff, they would like learn to respect you and almost like even protect you. So that's it. But anyway, I was in the dream. I was on the roof of that building, okay, and the building had been completely restored. I had a dream about this building a few weeks ago, and I was inside the building, and the dream had been inside the building. The building had been completely restored, and the neighborhood cleaned up. And to my amazement, I went online and discovered that the neighborhood has been cleaned up, but not gentrified. It's been taken over by Nepalese and Tibetans, who've actually turned it into a little kind of Nepal and opened up all the restaurants where all the rich people from Manhattan go over to have Nepalese and Tibetan meals, so they can be all trendy and say, have you ever eaten goat's yak soup and shit like that? And the neighborhood is like it's totally considered safe and respectable now because it has all these trendy restaurants. So that was interesting enough. But this latest dream, I was on the roof of the building, okay, and on the roof of the building, inside a kind of a room, was a laundromat, as the Americans call them. Which many of those apartment buildings in America have. And there was a woman working in there, and there was all washing machines and dryers. And I went over to her, and it was like she was like the Virgin Mary or something. The Virgin Mary was she would say she was like Freya. She was full of beauty and love. She was a middle-aged woman, full of beauty and love, and she showed me how to clean my clothes, how to wash them, how to put them in the dryer, and what kind of coins I would need, and how to do all this kind of thing. And I was the only one in this room, in this beautiful laundrette, my beautiful laundrette. Remember that film with Daniel Day-Lewis when he before started out? And the clothes represent the same thing I spoke about at the beginning of the show: the washing away of the filth and dirt, the removal of particulates and toxins. And that was very apparent in the dream last night, very, very apparent. And so that was my dream. Now, if you had dreams like that this week, let me know, okay? But here's how the project is going to go about from this point going forward. What I would like all of you to do is to start, and those of you who are listening, I want to partake in this important experiment. I would like you, for the next 2 weeks, if you have a dream that you think is symbolic, interesting. Now, you don't have to. If you had a dream that you were shagging the girl across the street, that's okay. I mean, yeah, that happens. But something very symbolic that has archetypes, imagery, and specific kinds of things, like on the roof of buildings, like trees. I mean, I'm not putting prompts into your head, like sailing across a river, like climbing a mountain, or anything like it. See, and especially if they're dark. If you have a night hag experience, you know what the night hag is. It's a demon, an entity that attacks mainly women. It's usually nearly always women in their sleep, and it often happens when a relationship is broken up. It always happens to nice women too. It never happens to crazy women, but it happens to nasty women. It happens to nice women, and it usually, like, my aunt suffered from them all her life, and they were horrific when she got divorced from my uncle. And so even if, especially to have things like that, but anything. But here's the important part. Don't post about it on any. Someone suggested this week that I start a public or a Facebook group about this. No, I don't think that's a good idea, and I'll tell you why. Because if some person says, I had a dream last night, I was riding the arse of Shirley Bassey on a sailboat, it might prompt other people to have the same dream. So what I would like you to do is, anytime you feel like it, write down your dream and type it up. You don't have to go mad. And if you want to draw in some little pictures, it's difficult for you to talk about it, or you find that you see an interesting symbol, I want you to draw it and scan it in, maybe, or take a mobile phone picture of it, and then send it to my email address. I'll put my email address below the window, okay? And my email address is thomassheridanarts@gmx.com. That's G like in Gary, M as in Michael, and X as in Xavier.com. And it'll also be in the descriptions of the video below. And send them to me, and we'll run a little experiment for 2 weeks. And then, this is why it's important that none of you actually see each other's dreams, because you might influence one another. And this way, you're not going to influence one another. You'll be purely natural and organic. And send me your dreams. And after 2 weeks, which will be, say, the show at the beginning of August, whatever the date the show falls in the first week of August, I will then have compiled a spreadsheet and a little kind of an overview of the dreams. And I will look for comparative and similar themes, memes, archetypes that appear in your dreams. Now, more importantly, we will then archive this and we'll run this experiment every so often. We will maybe even once a month, or once every 6 months or something like that. We will archive this on my web page, and we will wait to see if something happens in the real world that we were all tapping into, either on a symbology kind of way, archetypal, or maybe even literal way, that manifested in the dreams before the events actually happened. So instead of universities and those kinds of things having control over this stuff, we can do this ourselves, and we will do it. And I will hold the emails in archive just in case anyone, well, I won't give your names away, it'll be total privacy, it questions them. But I will write a summary, to make it easier, I will write a summary of certain events, certain themes that show up, and I'll copy and paste your quote if they show up in 2 dreams, just to put it on the web page, just to show that certain people are seeing similar ideas. Because the fact that the response to last week's show was so incredible, that I've really tapped into something here, and it's a narrative and a conversation and a road I really, really want to go with, and I want you to come along with me, because last week's show seemed to have hit so many people, hundreds of you, very, very deeply, and on a very, very subconscious and conscious way, that you were saying to me, yes, I want to talk about this now, this is the time of this, it's important to me now, let's go for it. So that's really important. And so, hold on a second, I'm getting a message here. I want to make sure the signal is okay. Okay, I believe Paul has just told me that the broadcast signal is having problems. I'm recording this in very, very good audio, so it'll be uploaded tonight on Thomas Sheridan Arts if there's audio problems where you're listening right now. So I can promise you, no matter what the broadcast signal is tonight, you'll get crystal clear audio when I upload this to YouTube. So thank you for that, Paula. And I will give Paula, if she wants the file, or Anne over there in LA, if they want to put them on the podcast. So we're not going to lose anything. Everything's fine. Now, if it gets really awful, we can start again. It's no problem. Now, so that's the project. Email me at thomassheridanarts@gmx.com any significant, powerful, or dreams that you feel are might be saying something deeper than usual, or even, I don't know, anything, images that appear, anything. If you start seeing sailboats, or you start seeing seagulls, or you start seeing ravens, just jot it down. Note it. I want to know about this. We all want to know about this, and we'll run a research program here and see if we can actually forget all this stuff of like running these web bots and stuff to predict the future. I believe all that power exists within us. So many people came forward after events like 9/11 and many other things that said, I had a dream about that about a month or 2 weeks before it happened. Or dreams like I had on August, I think it was August 7th, 2001. It's in my dream diary, where I was walking on the ruins of a destroyed, what I thought was at the time was a bridge. It was all broken girders, miles above a city full of skyscrapers, which I didn't recognize as New York in the dream, but as we know, a month later, that's where it was. Now, so that would be fantastic if you want to help on that. And this could be really special because I don't think anything like this gets done in alternative radios so much. And so it'd be a fun project and an interesting project. We may all discover that we're psychic at some level. I know, well, we are all psychic at some level. Now, because we predominantly speak English and we speak in the English language, we never really know about investigations into Fortean ideas and things like this in other languages, in other societies. And this is often an unfortunate thing because we miss out on a lot. We tend to get very ghettoized in believing that the English speaking world is where all this stuff happens. But it goes on all over the world. And I recently came across some stuff that's very important to this idea, and the idea of that our dreams represent us outside our bodies in a different world, and they're somehow explorations of our longings and our desires, and maybe our subconscious fears. Now, I never heard about this guy until last week, and his name is George Hygen. Georghyen. Now, you may ask yourself, who is this guy? Well, he lived between 1908 and 1994, and he was the professor of botany at the Norwegian Agricultural University. Now, on top of the fact that he was a professor of botany, he was, in the 1960s, the most ardent opposer to water fluoridation of the water supply in Norway, and he was the most instrumental voice in preventing fluoridation of water in Norway. He was not a crank, he was not an activist, he was a very well respected professor, academic. Now, the reason why he was so ardently against the fluoridation of water was because of one other thing. Not only was he one of Norway's foremost intellectuals through his long life, I'm talking about this guy was the Stephen Hawkins of Norway. Not only was he that, but he was also a parapsychology, and he was the chairman of the Norwegian Society for Parapsychology between 1955 and 1963, and again 1992 and 1993. His work was so influential and so yielded such tremendous results in the scientific way that he approached it, that he was also the impetus for the British Society of Psychical Research, which modelled their own society on the work he had done in Norway. The idea was that this was an intellectual look at parapsychology using scientific methods and not coming from a, shall we say, a fruity or a kind of a woo-woo way, but from a very, this was in the days before that piece of shit Richard Dawkins came along, and morons are watching Mythbusters DVDs and think, I'm a science man, I'm into science, I practice reason, I practice reason, while they're watching the Mythbusters DVD and saying, we gotta get the top of our son's penis chopped off and circumcised because we practice reason. Those types, right? But before those days existed, and before the witch hunting happened against intellectuals such as Rupert Sheldrake, who actually look into these things, was going on, especially outside the English-speaking world. George Huygens, was not only a parapsychology researcher, highly intellectual, but his own group had members such as Harold Sheilandup, a double professor of philosophy and psychology, who authored a classic text on psychic phenomena called Die Schuke Menenske, The Hidden Man. Now, his work into clairvoyance, dreams, parapsychology, and human intuition was the direct reason why he was so vehemently against the fluoridation of water in Norway. He had stumbled upon the fact that what these people tell us about the pineal gland being calcified by fluoridation, affecting our spirituality, as the New Agers said, it doesn't. It doesn't affect our spirituality. It affects our clairvoyance and our extrasensory perception. It also heavily affects our dreaming because it alters and destroys melatonin production, and this has been scientifically validated, which destroys dreaming and destroys the power of dreaming. Now we're starting to look down the fluoridation rabbit hole in a very, very, very different way. While the truth mafia, while the mainstream truth heroes push these ideas that fluoridation was done by the Nazis in the concentration camps to make us docile, not true. Absolutely not true, and it's not in the book The Crimes of I.G. Farben, which is often referenced. And that it makes us docile, I don't think it does. I think it makes us docile. The only thing that you can really hardcore put your finger on regarding fluoridization of water is its effect on the production of melatonin from the pineal gland in the brain. And this affecting sleeping and dreaming cycles. Now, it's well known that if people stop dreaming, they go into psychosis. This has been well known for about 50 years, that people who stop dreaming become psychotic. Look around you. Look at the fluoridated countries. People are crazy. People are batshit crazy. People are docile. Humans are docile everywhere by nature. But look at the United States, look at Ireland, look at Canada, look at Australia, look at anywhere that's fluoridated. These are dysfunctional societies on some level. Why are areas where you have strong, shall we say, cultural types, Ireland is targeted, the Basque region in Spain? What the fuck? Why of all the places outside Ireland did they go for is where the Irish came from, the Basque region? North America. Not only do you have the many immigrant groups there, but the Native Americans, the Aborigines in Australia. The dream time, folks. Someone somewhere in the past figured out that if they could interrupt human dreaming, they could do something to us. They could make us insane, unsane, psychotic, and lead us into the abyss. And this, I'm now starting to believe, is the real purpose of fluoridation. It robs us of our participation with the exterior hidden side of us, the extrasensory part of our being that travels in dreams, has premonitions, moves outside our body. That's what they're after. Why? Because when you take that away, you're turning us into a robot. Someone said to me last week that the ego was the first stage of transhumanism. I totally see that. It was. The first stage of transhumanism was the ego. Now we need the ego, just like we need modern medicine, some of the time, just like we need technology. But the ego was the first stage of transhumanism, because previous to that, we would have communicated through verbal cues and so on. So there's been a definite progression to remove the instinctual, archetypal human from us. Because the more robotic we are, the less magical we are, and this is going right back to the Roman Empire, the more we can be controlled. And if you take away your dreams, you remove those dreams, well, we lose the magic. Because look how many eureka moments in science have come from dreams. Look how many songs, I think it was Paul McCartney, and I'm not a Beatles fan, but I do like the song Yesterday. And Paul McCartney said he woke up one morning with the song Yesterday humming in his head, and he had it as a dream the night before. And he was sure that someone else must have written it. Well, it was the other side of him, in the other side of his reality, before he destroyed his brain with pot and becoming a weed head and writing the shit music of Wings and all this crap solo stuff. Before I did all that, that was the other side of him in the non-fluoridated, non-pot up weed head state, coming up with that song in the other version of him. So that's why you have to be careful with alcohol and pot and all this stuff. These are not helping you move beyond the state. They're actually stopping you, because dreaming is the answer, not the false transcendental thing. Our ancestors did not take mushrooms often. They may have taken psychedelics to go into warlike states like berserkers. Most of the time, drumming was sufficient. Fire at night, dancing and chanting was sufficient. But nothing was more powerful than dreaming. Dreaming is the true shamanic path. Now, one of the things that George Huygens was famous for, and I've only found this out recently, is a book called Varduga, Paranormal Nasta Phenomena, which roughly translates as the Vardogar, the national paranormal event, or the national Norwegian paranormal experience. Now, I found out about this on an old copy of 40 Time, not that old, and there's some bits in here, and I went up and looked up the book online. Fortunately, this 100-page book is not available in English, which is a shame, and it just kind of pisses me off, because it makes you wonder how many of gems like this are not available in English. Now, this was written by George Huygens, and it's very important, okay? Because this is a book written by an intellectual who was deeply opposed to fluoridation, who realized and discovered that there's more to us in terms of our sleeping and waking cycles than just sleeping and waking. It's another version of us, and it ties into clairvoyance, astral traveling, and being outside our bodies and everything else, and ultimately enlightenment. Now, what's interesting about the Vardoga is that it's strictly a Nordic phenomena. In Iceland, it's known as the Frelgia, and the Varduga in Norway, or Vardogar in Norway. And it basically is an experience I've never heard of this before. It's very interesting, But what it basically is that people who are at home and their loved ones are out of the house, what happens is they hear the sounds of their husband, their sons, their daughters, their boyfriends, their friends, their roommates coming home about 15 minutes before they actually come home. So they would hear the car pull up in the driveway, or they would hear them walking from the bus or train station. They would hear their foot crunching in the snow. They would hear the key being turned in the latch, the door being opened, the door being closed. And having been to Norway many times myself, the Norwegian tradition of taking your shoes off in the hall, or the sound of a cane being put up against the wall, or an umbrella being hung up on a rack. But nobody is there. Then, 15 minutes later, the event happens in reality. What happens is all the sounds that they've heard 15 minutes previous when nothing happened happens again, but this time in real space-time, and their loved one comes home. This has been a very well documented and researched phenomena in both Norway and Iceland. A person is heard approaching and entering a house, usually their home. The listener or listeners, often more than one person, can clearly follow the person's progress outside and inside the house until the sounds suddenly stop. On closer inspection, nobody has entered and there is no evidence of anyone having been outside. If it's winter and snowing, which in Norway, it will be in Norway and Iceland, there will be several months of the year, it's pretty easy to check because there should be footprints in the snow, tire marks in the driveway, and there's nothing. Now, the Vidogar or the Vidugar are not seen as scary ghosts. They're called ghosts, but they're not seen as scary ghosts. They're seen as friendly ghosts, but they're not actually ghosts. Because now that what they really are is the person who's coming home has so much love for their home, so much connectedness to their family members, so much connection, so longing to get home, that another aspect of them arrives home first before them. Let that sink in. They're coming home and they're saying, oh, I can't wait to see my missus. I can't wait to see my beautiful girlfriend. I can't wait to sit down and get my shoes off by the fire. This sense of love and longing to be home, especially in harsh climates such as you have in Norway and Iceland, that another version of them, the dream version of them, gets home first. Here's a quote from the book, page 62. My father was a country doctor up north in a district that had no motor roads. We often heard his sleigh bells as we sat waiting around the paraffin lamp. The front door would open and we heard his footsteps and we would put his walking stick away, and then nothing. 15 minutes later, the sounds would repeat, and then he actually arrived. He was so longing to get home out of the cold to his home that the dream state of him, the other side of him, was there first. From page 33 of the book. We girls slept on the first floor. It was always in the evening. We would hear the Vidogar. We used to store our bicycles in the outhouse with a funny old lock that would screech when the key was turned. My sister would often go out while I stayed home, and I heard the lock many times, followed by footsteps on the stairs and along the corridor. Then nothing, until the exact things happened for real 15 minutes or so later. Page 31. I heard my brother's Vidogar, countless times. I heard him enter the hall and walk up the stairs. Upstairs, I heard him open the door and close it again. Then there were no more sounds until he actually arrived 10 to 15 minutes later. I often wondered why I never heard anything like it when my husband came home. Page 16. If I return home later than intended, and then think I should have been home by now, the people will at home will usually hear me arriving quite clearly. This again suggests that he thinks of himself, he longs to be home with his family, and they hear him because this other part, this makes you think everything about ghosts. That you makes you really think what ghosts are. I've never really gone for the idea that ghosts are departed spirits of others. I think they're people like you and me in our dream states in other houses. And suppose, like, take a movie like Poltergeist, where all these events are going on. We never really think that these events could be traumatic for the quote unquote ghost, right? We never think that. But that ghost in a poltergeist experience or some kind of horrific haunting, that could be you, me, or someone else having a nightmare and sharing that nightmare with the other version of us in that other person's house. Page 82. Curiously enough, this is not in the least a bit scary, but the rest of my family have been skeptical until one day when I was waiting for my husband together with my grown-up son. I heard the usual sounds but said nothing. My son looked up and said, "Now I have heard it too." And this was George Huygens, the Norwegian intellectual who did all this research for many, many years, and then, after following it, became the most ardent critic against water fluoridization in Norway. We have gone into something very powerful here. This is the real shit. You've not heard this anywhere on alt media that I'm aware of before. And this is why you tune into this show, because I have people all over the world who feed me this stuff in non-English languages. And when I read about George Huygens' anti-fluoridation crusade in the 1960s, I nearly fell out my chair, mate. I nearly fell off my chair because it finally gave me what could be the answer to why water fluoridation exists and why we should oppose it. They're making us psychotic and they're killing the other half of us to make us as transhumanist and robot as possible. And that's why socialist ministers and socialist governments have been on the forefront of water fluoridization policies all over the world. Now, with the Vidugar, what else does that remind you of? I'll tell you what it reminds you of. Dogs. Dogs who know their owners are coming home. People who love their dogs, when they're coming home from a shit day at work, will say to themselves, "I can't wait to see the doggy, because she will be waiting for me, wagging his or her tail, jumping up, I'm so glad to see me." Dogs know when their owners are coming home. Rupert Sheldrake has done tremendous work into this, and they know. The dogs know. The dogs know. The dogs are witnessing the Vidugar themselves. And yet we make our dogs drink fluoridated water. It's the same thing. It's love. When love is expressed towards someone, when they say to sometimes married couples or people who love each other, brothers and sisters, or even good friends, there's a silvery rope that connects them. Well, here you go. There's plenty of proof of it. Fluoridization will kill that silvery rope. I would love to see if the divorce rates went through the roof in places where water fluoridation took place. I would love to see if psychosis, forget about docile things and people being docile. Let's look at this aspect of it, because this, I think, is the real beef. Why George Huygens was so vehemently against fluoridization of water in Norway. The doors are opening now. Finally, we're starting to get near something that's presenting a fecking answer. Fluoridization never made any sense to me ever. If it affects teeth, knowing what greedy motherfuckers dentists are, well, they are in Ireland anyway, why would they put something in the water that puts them out of business? Even if it does affect and protect teeth enamel, and there is some evidence to show that it does, in both ways. Even if that's the case, why is topical treatment enough? Why the ingestion? Why are Irish people specifically targeted? Why are towns in the UK, such as Birmingham, with large Irish populations targeted? Why is the Basque region of Spain the only Spain in Europe that's the only area in Europe that's targeted, which is basically the place the Irish people came from? They're the prototypical Irish, the Basque people in Spain and the people of northern Portugal. Why there? Why did George Hagen, a man of his stature, who studied both in hardcore science and parapsychology in a time when you could, without being ridiculed, come vehemently out against water fluoridization? We're getting answers. We're getting the real answers now. The word means, the Vadogar means warning spirits. That's literally what it means, a warning spirit. And this is what happens in our dreams. When we have premonitions of things happening, we become our own warning spirit. And this is how we should approach this dream experiment that I'm now proposing. When we go to dream at night, when we go to sleep at night, in our consciousness, we must start thinking of, oh, I can't wait to dream tonight. It's going to be beautiful. I love my dreams. My dreams are so helpful and so useful. I believe that this positive approach to our dreams will actually, and this positive insight, that's my cat Benny screaming in the background. Yeah, Benny, you'll go to bed soon. Screaming in the background. He loves dreaming all the time. This positive approach to it will improve our dreaming. We're going to work the dreaming like a muscle. We're going to work the dreaming just like a muscle. We're going to specifically dream because we want to dream. And we're going to specifically dream because we're going to find use in this. Instead of thinking of dreaming as this strange thing we do, let's start thinking, like I said last week, of our dreams being a journey we're going on. And this time we're going on a journey to an undiscovered country with a blank piece of paper, and we're going to map that country out. That's what we're going to do now. We're going to map this uncharted territory. Like I said, we're going to become somnonauts. It's already, since the last show, and I've casually just started it, yielded very, very impressive results in a short time. I filtered the fluoride out of my water, by the way. I have a filter. And it should be something that we'll all do the same way. Now remember, the link to my email will be below this, thomassheridanarts@gmx.com. Do not tell anybody on Facebook, Twitter, or post on your blog what you dreamed about. Only tell me about it. And that way we can't influence each other, and that way we'll get good hard data. And I believe that we will see magic unfolding. And if the response to last week's show is any way indicative in how it cleaned out this reality and literally altered the matrix and brought Thor swinging into this reality, then we have touched something very, very powerful indeed. Thank you very much for staying tuned tonight. This is going to be a great experience for all of us going forward. My name is Thomas Sheridan on the Reality Bites Radio Network.com. My website is thomassheridanarts.com. My YouTube channel is Thomas Sheridan Arts, and my email for contacting me with your dream data is thomassheridanarts@gmx.com. Take care, dream on dreamers, and I'll see you next week, and feck 'em if they can't take a joke. Good night.